On the 5th of September of 2022, after the Ukrainians had launched their counteroffensive in the south, in the Kherson region, another counteroffensive took place in the northeast, in the Kharkiv region. And unlike the very slow-moving and high-casualty counteroffensive in the south, which, as I documented, took heavy losses for Ukraine, this Kharkiv 2022 counteroffensive saw much faster success. It was estimated that by the 11th of September, just a week after it was launched, Ukraine had retaken as much as 3,000 square kilometers. This offensive was touted as a major battlefield success and possible game changer for the Ukrainians by the Western liberal media.
Being described as a possible turning point in the war in Ukraine, Kyiv's forces have retaken control of yet another Russian military stronghold in the northeast.
Ben Hodges, a retired lieutenant general and former commander of the U.S. Army in Europe, described it as the worst setback for Russia, which led to panic amongst the Russian troops and the abandonment of much of their equipment.
But I would also say that the Russian defenders, these guys are exhausted, their logistical system exhausted, the constant pounding of Russian logistics and command posts by Ukrainians. It really, the Russians have cracked. They do not have the will to fight in those places.
These statements, however, were largely later proven to be quite inaccurate, much like his Crimea by summer prediction. The Guardian newspaper of England claimed that the Kherson offensive was just a disinformation campaign to distract Russia from the real offensive in the Kharkiv region, according to Ukraine's special forces. The article cited Taras Berezovets, a former national security advisor of Ukraine's special forces, who stated that it was a big special disinformation operation. Russia had thought it would be in the south and moved their equipment. Then, instead of the south, the offensive happened where the Russians least expected and caused them to panic and flee. He said that the media stir around the southern offensive was a coordinated disinformation campaign by Ukraine and was successful in provoking Russia to move equipment and personnel to the southern front, including partly from the Kharkiv region. Meanwhile, our guys in Kharkiv were given the best Western weapons, mostly American. This statement too was also inaccurate, as I will reveal shortly. The Guardian also interviewed a Ukrainian military expert by the name of Serhiy Kuzan, who claimed that we are actually surprised by how poorly the Russians have retreated. The retreat, he said, is part of the art of war. All of these pro-Ukrainian reports and analyses were largely misleading as to what really happened in Kharkiv. But at least the Guardian newspaper showed that their sources of information were actually Ukrainian experts who were obviously biased. The worst of the reporting came from the liberal Western media, from the likes of Anne Applebaum, a historian and not a military expert, and a liberal hawk who published an article in The Atlantic making utterly delusional reports like this on the 11th of September of 2022, entitled, "It's Time to Prepare for Ukrainian Victory. The liberation of Russian-occupied territory might bring down Vladimir Putin." She, along with Michael McFaul and Max Boot, have produced some of the most one-sided, inaccurate reports of this war, as I documented in my recent video, which YouTube had initially censored, and I suggest you check it out before it is taken down. One of the first reports that highlighted that many of these claims were false came from Al Jazeera on the 12th of September 2022. Where it raised concerns that the speed and ease with which Ukraine regained control of the area in Kharkiv is raising questions. It reported that, contrary to Mr. Ben Hodges, Russia abandoned next to no artillery or armored vehicles, and I quote here, "Their retreat from heavily fortified areas did not look like a panicked flight that followed heavy fighting, according to videos from Ukrainian military reports. This runs contrary to Mr. Kuzan's claim in The Guardian. Al Jazeera continues to say